Hey team, welcome to this 5-part mini-series called the Absentee Farmer. If you followed my last video, you know that I like the multi-crop greenhouses. So what we're going to try to do for this particular series, if I can drive straight and not crash here, is we're going to try to take and use just the production facilities, just the greenhouses, just the factories, and what we're going to try to do is make $1 million. Oh! Roll over, roll over, roll over. Come on, you can do it. Yes. Okay. So we're going to try to make $1 million in the next 2 years using the greenhouses and the factories. Now, here's the thing. We're not going to pick anything up. We're not going to deliver anything. We're not going to move anything. We're not going to do anything but sit on our ass and play with the numbers. The idea is this. Buy it from the greenhouse, buy it for the production facility, buy it for the or within the production facility itself so we don't have to haul anything. We're not going to deliver anything because we're going to sell it right from the production facility or the greenhouses directly as well. So the idea, we're going to start off with 6 multi-crop greenhouses. Thought I'd be kind of cool and might put them in a little donut circle type shape. And what are we going to do for water? Well, the water is going to actually be the easiest part because we're actually going to use the free water, big water mod. We're going to place down the big 20-gallon tank and boom, we're going to have all the water we're going to want. So once we get our greenhouses set here, we're going to go into each of these greenhouses and we're going to turn on the crops that we can use water with. Now, that's what we're going to start with, what we're going to progress on further than that. So each one of these, what's going to be the best crop? I don't know. Let's go with our root crops. We used that in our last series, worked out pretty well. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to focus on root crops. We're going to take those root crops, going to activate each one of them. We're going to sell them, put them into a sales state so that we are selling those crops, and we're going to turn on all of the selling for 3 of them, and then the other 3 of them we're actually going to put that down to our factory, and our factory is going to make sugar, and it's also going to make for us our French fries. Now, over the next couple of days, what we're going to do is we're going to sleep and we're going to wake up. First thing we're going to do is we're going to look at our finances. So day 1, looks like we made a little bit of money. We're out about $7,500. Keep in mind, this is half of the month. So the prior month in August, we actually made 10 grand on our production sales. So we're going to go through each and every month, pretty much the same steps. We're going to figure out and analyze the data and look at the data and see what is going to be best for us to create. So in the beginning here, we weren't selling a whole lot of stuff out of our factory. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to switch over our factory runs and we're going to turn on those factory runs. We're going to turn on our French fries. We're going to turn on our sugar beet sugar. Then we're going to take each one of the outputs and we're going to set those to either to be storing because we're going to store for a short period of time and then we'll sell, or we'll set it to selling. We'll store for we'll actually sell it when it actually produces. So every single night that we sleep, we will be able to make money. Now, the general idea that we're going to start off with here is water crops. Those water crops are going to be our French fries and our sugar beet sugar. And those 3 buildings are going to produce and distribute down to the factory, and then the factory, whatever the factory makes, we will sell. Now, we will have fluctuations in price. We will see fluctuations in cost across the board as we progress, but to the most part, what we're going to try to do is balance each and every month between how much we're producing and how much we're selling, how much we're producing in the greenhouse and pushing down to the factory, and how much the factory can handle and intake, and go on from there, step by step by step. We're going to concentrate just on this crop for now. Right now, what I'm doing is I'm trying to generate a little bit more extra cash so that we'd have some more money in hand so that we can expand. So we're going to jump through day 3 here. If we're looking at our costs, we're making right around 10 to 14,000, but our costs are also slowly going up. And because we're now moving things from the greenhouse over to the factory and not doing it by hand, it's doing it through the automation process, it's actually charging us that amount as well. So we're going to be generating more costs as we go, but hopefully we will get to a state where we'll be making more money than anything else. So the next thing, now that we have a little bit of money in pocket, let's go and expand. We have 6 greenhouses. Let's put in another 6 greenhouses. This time, I don't know, maybe we'll do more of a traditional square kind of a model where we kind of put them side by side. And again, we're going to go with the multi-crop greenhouses. We're going to put 6 of them in, 3 across the top, 3 across the bottom. And the general idea behind this is the other ones are making root crop. We had success with that in our last series. So I was thinking maybe on this one we might do the same thing as we did before and concentrate on oil crops. So the 6 that we have currently already built, 3 of them are going to the factory to be able to make French fries and sugar. And what we're going to do with this here is a very similar type model, a very similar type setup. Now, before we can do any of that with the factory, we actually have to go through and activate all these. So as we go through and activate with the water and then set the distribution models, and again, the idea is we're going to get to the point where 3 of them will be going to the factory to produce oil. We'll get to that here in a moment. And then the other 3 will just be straight out selling. Again, we still need water, so we're going to use the free water mod, and we're going to plop in our big old water tank right here in just a second. Now, the water tank will feed not only the 12 or the 6 greenhouses, and the distance of the water will also reach down to any factory that we had. So we're putting the factories just south or just to the bottom of where each one of those greenhouses are. So putting all that into context, what does that mean? Well, it means that at the end of this video, that's coming up here in just a second, we're going to have 12 greenhouses feeding into 2 different kinds of productions where we're going to be making either oil or French fries or sugar. Come back for the second part. Hey, welcome back to the Absentee Farmer. Now, this is episode 2, and in episode 2, we are continuing to expand. We had just put in the 6 more greenhouses. We put in we're going to convert those over to oil and have the oil crops, which would be the sunflower seeds and the canola oil. Canola, and we'll be then looking at that oil production. We'll be balancing each and every single month between how much we're producing in the greenhouses and how much is going to the actual production facility or the factory and how much is being made out of that factory. Again, the idea is I want to start off by having a little bit of surplus. So I want to produce more going into the factory than the factory can actually use. Once I get a little surplus going, then I'm going to back into being able to get a little bit more production going. So that's what we're doing here. We're not just looking at the water crops. We're actually going to go in and purchase directly through the greenhouse the manure, the fertilizer, either the manure or the fertilizer. In this case, I chose the manure because it's cheaper, and the lime and the seeds. The seeds are outrageous. Just to fill up one of these greenhouses is $20,000 worth of seeds. Then it's another $4,000 with the lime, and I think it was another $6,000 with the actual not lime, and then about 6,000, 4,000 for the manure and about 6,000 for the lime. I'll get that out here in a second. But so we just accrued a huge cost, but we also have an expansion. Now, if we look at how the expansion is going, we have already accumulated quite a few potatoes. Potatoes were creating faster than I actually expected them to. So what I wanted to do is then start tweaking them. And the idea here was that we would tweak the difference. So at one point, I was getting all of the potatoes and all of the sugar beets that was coming out of the production or out of the greenhouse with using the manure, and that was producing more than I could actually use. So then I turned that to being selling, and I was selling the ones that were being produced by the manure, and then flipping around the other way, and those that were still based off of water, I then had those go down to the production facility. Well, what has that really done for us? Well, it kind of jumped us from that $20,000 a month mark up to that $40,000, $50,000 a mark where we're making some pretty good money. So all I'm doing here is then concentrating on the idea of, okay, well, that's working really successful. We have plenty of stuff coming in. How do we then balance out and make as much money as we can? Now, because this was kind of a experiment, didn't actually have a spreadsheet or anything of that nature to work out exactly what tweaks to do when. I did find that I had some surplus left over and I wasn't producing enough. And later on, we actually end up buying a bigger facility that would help us do that. But for right now, now, if we could look into the current month of what we have, what we're doing here is we're going through and making those swaps and making those choices. We're switching over the manure and the seed production because it's so high. We're actually selling those, and we're taking the others that were just water and pushing them back into just the production. Now, the other thing is I never actually expanded beyond just 3 of them using the manure and the seeds. I could have done that and went with the other 3 and had a lot more than I actually needed. So I think this $2 million or this $1 million challenge could have easily been a $2 million challenge, but I liked where I was at right now. I liked the way it was flowing. It felt really good and felt really stable. So this is part 2. We got part 3 coming up. And if you're enjoying the series, please give us a thumbs up, give us a like, share it with other folks if you don't mind. If you hate the series, let me know as well. But again, this is part 2 of the 5-part series. And if you're liking it so far and you want to see how quickly we get to that 1 million, come on back and check out part 3. I think you'll like it. Hey, welcome back to part 3 of the Absentee Farmer. Now, we're into several weeks behind, or several months now in our belt, and we're finding that things aren't working as efficiently as they would like to. So even though we're making good money, we've already hit the $291,000 mark. We could probably be even making more money with that if I wanted to expand and really go down and to spend more money, such as buying more manure, more seeds, more lime, and really beef up those greenhouses. But I really liked to where this was kind of sitting. This seemed like it would be something that would be reasonable. I know at some point I'm going to have to spend that $60,000 again to take the 3 that I have and restock them with the manure and the lime and the seeds. I know at some point in the future I'm going to actually look at doing that with the sunflower and the canola oil as well over on the oil side. So that would mean that when that happens about once every 4 months or so, I'd actually spend about $120,000 in that month to be able to really utilize all just the 3. And if I was to actually go and not do the 3 but actually do the all 6 on one side, all 6 on the other side, I would be right around $300,000 investment every 4 months or so. Now again, if the return on that investment is anywhere between $4 and $700,000, which is what it turns out to be at the end, it definitely would be something that I could do. I could really, for the first couple of years, keep my current working capital, my cash flow kind of low, and be able to utilize as much of that money as possible. But in my head, what I wanted to do is I wanted to try to build up some cash. I didn't really want to have no money, no money, no money for a year and a half or 2 years and then cash out and have a huge amount of money at the end. So what I've been doing over this part 3 is I'm really taking the potatoes and I'm tweaking. I'm looking at each little micro change and putting this one into the production, putting that one over there into sales, moving it back and forth, trying to balance out, not to get too much things in a backlog, but to keep everything moving. But what I found out really quickly was across the board, I'm producing more crops than the factory can handle it. Now, if I went with a traditional factory as opposed to the American factory mod that I'm using here, I probably would see that that factory could hold a lot more input and it could be a lot bigger in how much it could take on and move across the board. But I wanted to keep it kind of small. I wanted to keep it kind of manageable. This is just a test after all, that I wanted to see how far along I can get with this particular mindset that I have. I didn't want to spend a lot of money up front. I didn't want to continue to spend money month over month over month with a big bang at the end. And I might actually try that series and try to see. I'm thinking maybe one of these days I might try to create one where you spend every dime you have up until a certain point in time, and then you sell everything off and maybe have a $1 million month or something like that. That may be kind of fun to do in the future. But all I've been doing here is jumping back and forth and tweaking, increasing the outputs, decreasing the outputs. So just like we did with the potatoes, we're actually increasing the outputs across the board with the oil as well. So now we're going to end up in this episode with 3 of our greenhouses in the oil side that are being maximum production using the manure, the lime, and the seeds. 3 will be doing the same thing with the potato and sugar beet crops. So we have 3 on each side, although there's 6 in each side that we could have used, and we found out that we are currently maximizing our factories by doing this. So this is part 3. If you're enjoying the series, please come back with part 4, and in part 4 we're going to continue this process, and hopefully by the end of part 5 we're going to have over $1 million in the bank. Come back. Think you'll enjoy it. Hey, welcome back to part 4, the absentee farmer, and it's time to expand once more. So we have our 6 greenhouses making our root crops. That is going down to a very small root crop facility that is making French fries, and it's also making sugar beet sugar. We have another setup with 6 greenhouses, 6 greenhouses making oil crops, and those are going down to a small oil factory. Now we're going to go and purchase a large factory. Now this large factory can handle everything across the board, and it can also handle all of those factory needs simultaneously. So it's a little bit cheating in my mind using this thing, but I wanted to see if I could max it out as quickly as I maxed out one of the small ones. So by purchasing this, I'm purchasing another $50,000 of factories, and I really don't think I needed to do this. When I look back on it, I could have easily continued the process that I was doing and just sell off the crops that I had, or the surplus crops, I could sell them off. Or what I decided to do here is just go ahead and use the factory and produce something a little bit different. So in this case, we're going in and we're going to be producing the nice shiny potatoes, and we are also going to be producing some pig food out of that. So we're going to set the potatoes and the pig food to sell. We have to change up our distribution model somewhat so that we have some of our crops being distributed down to the new factory as opposed to everything going to the old factory. And if you don't make those tweaks and change the distributions, what will happen is the first factory will the system will continue to send crops down to the first factory until it's completely full and can't hold anymore. Then it will send it down to the second one. There's some priority settings that you can change on there to be able to make sure that you get the right crops down to the right factory that you wanted to do. And again, I didn't want to mess with a whole lot of those kind of tweaks and kind of really fight with the system. I really wanted to keep it super simple. So what I did here is I just turned off the inputs into the small one and turned on the inputs into the large one. Then I went through and made some tweaks so that we would sell less of the crops and we would have more of the crops moved into the large factory. So in this case, it was the potatoes and the sugar beets, and push those into the factory. And then I went and set the selling mechanisms for that factory as well. Now, in addition to that, I also went through and beefed up our productions for our oil so that we could have more oil production. So now that we have 3 of them producing a lot more than what we're producing before with just water, because we're now using the manure, the lime, and the seeds, just like we did on the potatoes. So what do we end up here in this episode? Well, we end up with our 12 in total. And we have 6 of them making root crops, 6 of them making oil crops, and each one of them have 3 of the greenhouses, 3 of the 6 greenhouses that are maxed out with output by using the manure, the lime, and the seeds. That is generating us a lot of output as well as a lot of cash that we're putting in the bank right now. So this has been episode 4. If you want to see the final episode, episode 5, come back and check it out and see if I hit that 1 million mark in the 2 years I need. Hey, welcome back, team. This is episode 5 of the Absentee Farmer mini-series. Now, the idea that we are trying to accomplish here is we didn't want to do anything. I wanted to be lazy and sit on my ass, and all I wanted to do was tweak the numbers, kind of the automated farmer kind of a thought process. So throughout this series, what have we been doing? Well, we've just been tweaking things. We've been taking our 6 multi-grain greenhouses and altering the inputs and outputs, trying to create as much crop as we can. Well, in reason, we only did 3 on each that we actually maximized because I didn't want to spend the money at the end of the day. And what we wanted to do is be able to take our starting value, which was $100,000, we're on easy mode, and just run over the next 2 years and see how far that we would get. Well, as it turns out, we actually got to that 1.187 mark, and that allowed us to really make $1 million in 2 years. So we went from an August time frame to an August time frame in the game. We were able to sit on our ass and not do too much other than setting some parameters here and there. We were able to sell directly from our factories or sell directly from our greenhouses. That allowed us to stay inside, stay in the shade, and put our feet up and sip a little brewski and have a little fun watching us money roll in while we didn't do anything. Now, we are getting down to the point where we need to restock on our greenhouses, and then what we would need to purchase on that is like we've already talked about before. We would want to purchase some more manure, we would want to purchase some more seeds, we would want to purchase some more lime. In total, that would be about $120,000 investment to get all 12 of the greenhouses back up and running in good shape. About 10 to 20 grand a piece, or maybe even a little bit more than I think about it, probably closer to $340,000 to get everything up and running. We could also look at changing over all of our greenhouses to where all of them are running off of the seeds, and we would maximize the output from each and every one of them. We could quadruple our use of our factory by taking in and using multiple crops, or maybe taking crops now that we have already a surplus of potatoes, maybe switch over to something else, some kind of grain, or maybe we could switch over to fruit crops and make some fruit salad, or maybe we could switch over to some grains and make some flour and then turn that flour into bread. The options that we have here to be able just to sit back and do this and really be an absentee farmer are pretty much endless. It's just a matter of how much tweaking we want to do and how much tweaking that we want to be able to play with. Now, I'm currently working on a new series. It is going to be my Sibling Farm series. I hope you'll come back and check that out. It'll be a role-playing series. But while I was away from the house and was on the road, I got to thinking, can I do this? Can I make $1 million just by sitting on my ass and playing with these numbers? And as it turned out, it was pretty easy. I didn't have a lot of thought into it, and I've learned a lot. And if I was to do it again, I think I would be able to even double this fairly easy. So I throw out a challenge to anybody out there who wants to accept it. See what you can do in 2 years and see how much money you can make just using production facilities and greenhouses or whatever you want to use. But can you be an absentee farmer and make $1 million? Well, I did. It only took 2 years and it was pretty damn easy. Hope you enjoyed this series. Come back and see me again sometime. Take care.